Hi everyone, I'm so excited to be here today with Anna Lundberg. Welcome, Anna.
Thanks, Sabine. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. Actually, it's been many years since I saw Anna last. We were actually working both for P&G in Geneva, Procter & Gamble for the ones who are not familiar with the abbreviation. And basically, I invited Anna to this interview because after our corporate career, she also went off to start her own business. And as I have seen her both in P&G as well as on her own videos and podcast, I've just been so impressed by, well, how good of a presenter she is. And I love her as a personality, her personality and as a person. And what I've seen over the last couple of years is that even though she has started her own business, she's been still running, eating healthy, living a healthy lifestyle. So that's why I thought it would be a really good idea to share more about her and her lifestyle with you for some inspiration. I will quickly share with you the official bio from Anna to explain more about what she does. So Anna Lundberg, she is the founder of One Step Outside. And she helps people around the world to build businesses and create a lifestyle that allows them an unimagined sense of freedom, flexibility, and fulfillment. Since leaving her job in 2013, she's now reimagining what success looks like. And she's passionate about inspiring and supporting others to do the same. And I'm so excited about what career, what business you have started after P&G. And so I would love to hear about that more at the end of this interview. And to start off right now, my first question to you is tell me a little about what the role of sugar has been in your life.
Yeah, it's such an interesting question. I think to some extent, my mum was quite advanced, I think, for that generation, because she gave us sort of sugar-free chewing gum and, we only had sort of sweet cereals at the weekends and white toast. And so we had whole wheat during the week and brown rice and so on. My parents are Swedish, and in Sweden we have a tradition of eating Saturday sweeties, it's called, lördagsgodis. So, you only had the sweets on Saturday. So there was a bit of that kind of routine, I suppose, although mum was like the chewing gum was more for our teeth more than any kind of sort of losing weight or sugar awareness, I suppose. So that was sort of ingrained in me from an early age. But I think, unfortunately, the fact that it was such a special thing built it up in my head as this amazing treasure that I always look forward to and so on. So when I went round to friends' houses, I remember one friend, her mum gave us jam donuts after ballet, so that was so exciting. And my mum has these really embarrassing stories of me. One was actually, I don't know how I discovered this, I'm clearly sort of very invasive, because I went and found a drawer in her study where she had a box of sweets, and I went and gradually, I thought, took one now and then, but since she hadn't opened that drawer in a long time, one day when she arrived it was empty. And the other story, possibly worse, was we had been given, I don't know, Christmas sweets or something, and I barricaded the door. I was like 4. I barricaded the door to my bedroom, and when she opened the door, because of course I couldn't actually barricade it, I was sitting there sort of stuffing my face with sweets. So these are all very funny stories, but it just shows you kind of, I think, quite an unhealthy relationship to sweets. And I just think, so I had that kind of healthy upbringing about it, but then because of that, it became this forbidden thing that I sort of dreamed of, and then that kind of made it worse. So I think it's only recently, very recently, I'd say, that I'm sort of grown up enough to realize and to make my own mature choices. My sister and I both said that as soon as we had our own pocket money and got to school, to the tuck shop, as it's called in England, we bought, unhealthy snacks and so on. So that's, not great, because I think we weren't then empowered to sort of think about, why is this something that we shouldn't be eating, rather than it's just adults telling us not to eat it, so now we're going to break those rules. So as I said, it's more recently that I'm beginning to make choices because I want to, not because it's sort of a should that someone tells me. I'm not sort of stuffing my face with chocolates just because I know it's really good, because actually now it's not. It's more a nostalgic memory from my childhood. It's sort of psychological and emotional, isn't it? But so it's been sort of winding turns, I guess. And it's funny that you mentioned the Procter & Gamble time, because there too I went through different phases. Unfortunately, I've had to throw out a lot of my dresses that I wore there, and they literally are like that much too small for me, and I don't understand. I don't feel that much larger, and I don't know if it's just in my 20s. I guess I had a different body shape. I did a bit of going to the gym, I don't think we ate that healthily. There was a lot of partying and so on. So it's just interesting thinking back to, I think it was easier then, I suppose. So now I think I have a much more holistic view of well-being, and not so focused on the weight or the size or anything like that, and more thinking about, we can talk about that in a minute, but thinking about sort of well-being in a broader sense. But that's sort of a brief history, I guess, from childhood to now about my relationship with sugar.
Wow, so interesting. And also hearing especially about the food and the forbidden fruit effect, basically, from your mom. And what about the fika? Like in Sweden, I know that, yeah, after P&G, I worked at a company where I think 80% was Swedish, and they had their like afternoon fika, so lots of like coffee with sweets every day. Were you ever like, was it anything your mom was ever part of?
Well, to be honest, the difficulty was because as you can hear from my voice, I grew up in England. And so we went to Sweden, only for special occasions. And my favorite thing in Sweden is cinnamon buns and there's dough, like really sweet dough, like there's cardamom buns with vanilla, and there's these like biscuits, there's 7 sorts of cakes. It's just like, it's delicious. And because it was not just forbidden, but also foreign. Now you can very easily travel. And when you end up going to Sweden several times a year, it's no longer an excuse. But at the time, it's very easy to say, we're only here for the summer, we've got to eat these cinnamon buns. So again, that made it more of a special treat, but something that you kind of had to eat every day. So I think all of us in our family, actually a similar story, we've just been to Portugal, and we used to go to Portugal when we were little, and we all went as a family. And they have these, I'm going to pronounce it wrong, pastéis de nata, the vanilla custard tarts. And sometimes when my parents are there, they'll have like 3 in a day, and we certainly had 1 every day. And it's just such a lovely, again, nostalgic treat. It's only a small little tart, but it does escalate maybe too much after you're just kind of, got to have a nata today. Like it's so yeah, the fika, not so much. I certainly have, as many people have, sort of that afternoon kind of, and I'm working out quite a bit, so I get quite hungry, but at home I don't have anything sugary really. So I guess for good or bad, I can't actually have that cinnamon bun, unfortunately, but it's still something I look forward to when we go to Sweden.
I can imagine. And then every now and then it was actually, I had personally the same issue, so to speak, because when I was living in Switzerland and I would go back home in the Netherlands, I would always have this, I'm only here for a very short time. I need to enjoy every single thing that I missed. And then I went back to Switzerland. I'm like, oh, now I'm back here again. And I need to, enjoy all of this. And then we would be like traveling for work, and we're like, oh, now we're here. And basically then there was never a day where there was not an excuse. It's like, and so yeah, I've also become much, much better now, especially when we go to Italy, that I don't go like, oh, we're here only for a few days and I'm going to have gelato and pizza and pasta in the world. Now it's like, we're here once, and I'm just looking more in a point of view, as even what I already hear a bit from you is like rather focusing, how can I nourish my body rather than like just with our mind going like, oh, nostalgic, like, oh, I need to have this and, and this. And
it's not just travel, is it? It's Christmas. Somebody said to me, which is so interesting, you're not going to gain weight from what you do over Christmas. It's what you do the other 360 days of the year, right? So if you ate super healthily all year, then having a few sort of whatever it is, Christmas pudding pieces or something isn't going to matter. So, but there is always a reason. This is midsummer now in Sweden, and there's Christmas and there's Easter, there's birthdays, there's whatever weekends away. So if you certainly the lifestyle I'm living now, which has a lot more special occasions, I'd say, because I'm prioritizing those more maybe, it is unsustainable to treat all those as those kind of sweet treats.
And tell me more about your current lifestyle, because I have seen on Facebook, Instagram, I see you running, you've done some marathons, you're eating healthy. You look wonderful. So tell me more about your secret. How do you keep up with that when you're always on the run and so busy?
Yeah, well, I think for that reason, and again, it's quite a recent development. So I've sort of on and off, funny enough, when again, going back to childhood, I won the sports award at primary school. I won a netball award. I was always winning the races. I was really sporty, but something happened through my teens. Maybe, as girls develop, as we all do in puberty, I felt uncomfortable with my body for whatever reason. I sort of lost, and I guess, unfortunately, for whatever gender reasons, girls are not encouraged to do as many sports and continue with those. So I kind of lost track of that, and I lost that identity, which is a shame, because as I said, I was always really active and adventurous, and part of leaving my job has been to embrace more of that. So I've done like paddleboarding and hiking and all these things. So it's sort of, I guess, overcoming those beliefs that I'm not a sporty person. With running, I find that's often the case. People say, I'm just not a runner. It's like, I'm not a runner, I just run, and that makes me a runner. So that's something that I've kind of had off and on over the last few years. The way I do it now, and again, it's quite recent, is that I've just realized that I have to put my well-being first. It's such a cliche, but when you're working for yourself, taking care of yourself is taking care of the business. If I'm not well, my whole business collapses. So even for profit reasons, it's important for me to take care of myself. And then also, you mentioned that I talk about reimagining success. For me, success and the reasons why I left and why I'm running my business are to feel good, to be happy, to be with my friends and family, to run around with my niece and nephew, you know, and that's not served by me sort of sitting in a dark room by my computer. And unfortunately, exercise and that kind of thing is the first thing to go usually when you get busy. So to answer your question, my way of dealing with it has been to just make it non-negotiable. So some days are easier than others. Today I had actually no external sort of appointments until talking to you. So I was able to get up and sort of put my gym clothes on and do a couple of hours work. Then I've done a hard HIIT session this morning. And then, you know, I have time to cook a meal during my next break and stuff. So that works well. It does get trickier. Last week I had one of those back-to-back weeks, but I do try to look at my calendar ahead of time and, you know, schedule in I make sure then that I exercise first thing in the morning. I make sure, you know, I do online food shopping. So I make sure I've got the food at home. There are some good quick choices as well. So I try to, I guess, prepare for it as well. But really it's a mindset shift. It's not just like it's like at the end of the day when you work in a company too, a lot of people, you know, rather than they've said they're going to go to the gym, I can't remember the amount of times I brought the gym bag to work and then you just end up staying late and you take the gym bag home again and you didn't go to the gym because it was just the first thing to go, right? So now it's like, no, this is a part of my strategy. And that's when I work with my clients, we even do like a well-being strategy, and like, this is at the heart of your business. It has to be, otherwise it's not going to work. Otherwise you're going to build a business around, you know, around hustle, as it's called, and around being ill, and that's not what you want to do. It's not sustainable for you or the business.
Wow, I love your take on the mindset also, when you really just, you know, decide on this is your priority, because then you will find that there's always a way, even though, you know, sometimes we can't really, we're so stressed or there's so much going on that you feel like there's no time. But once you start planning it, as what you mentioned, even for example, like starting to work out, you know, first thing in the morning, it sets off like so many other great things during the day because you feel good about yourself, you know, you already set the tone for the day. So I really love that example. So for like, okay, shifting your mindset, but also then practically really preparing, you know, things in advance, so you really ensure that you take those measures, if you can say it that way.
Yeah. The only other thing I would say is also, and I keep pushing this, and this is also quite a recent discovery for me, but self-compassion, being kind to yourself. So if you miss a day, I mean, I've had that, so I just don't feel like going for a run, it's rainy and winter, you know, whatever, then I'll do a HIIT session inside. If I don't feel like doing HIIT, I'll do yoga. If I don't feel like doing anything at all, I'm not gonna, you know, beat myself up about it. I'll have a day off, maybe even 2-3 days, even a week off sometimes, and then it's just getting back into it. It's the same with, you know, an unhealthy weekend or something. It's like, right, well, back into it again on Monday. And I think we have that black and white thinking. I've certainly always been like either super, super healthy or super unhealthy. And I'm trying now more the moderation and being kind to myself and understanding that sometimes, you know, sometimes you do want that cinnamon bun, and that's okay.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that, because that's really something that I'm even discovering for myself. And I mentioned before, like the self-love and the self-compassion, because yes, it is so true. It is actually part of a healthy lifestyle. It's like, and also with the sugar, I found that, yeah, when, you know, when you want to reduce your sugar intake, and if you have one day you have a little bit more sugar, you know, a birthday cake or whatever, it's okay, you know, and there I feel like it's really good to have that self-compassion, because otherwise we go so much into the black and white thinking and think, oh, I messed up, and that might set up a whole other set of like yeah, sweets or whatever, because now you're like, okay, well, I might as well just give up on on this challenge. Where if you have more compassion, you can just, you know, continue whatever whenever you are ready again. And yeah, I think that's a really, really good tip. But I think that's already a great tip even to share with our audience, because that was going to be my next question for you. What would be your free top tips to share for our audience on how to live a healthy lifestyle and with less sugar in it when you're busy and underrun a lot?
Well, my first thing would be, and it's not a surprise, but would be to define what success means to you, both in terms of a big picture from my perspective, what you want out of life and business and career and so on, but also specifically when it comes to sugar and healthy eating, because that kind of vague, well, I want to be healthy or I should be eating less sugar isn't very helpful. So knowing exactly what you want and why it's important to you, understanding that, you know, maybe, I mean, it's very easy for sort of an old, overweight old man, when the doctor, well, maybe it's not easy, but it helps when a doctor tells you you're going to die if you don't do something. That's sort of suddenly the stick that makes you act. So you want, I guess, the carrot and the stick, but understanding it's not just because society and girly magazines tell me I should be thin, but it's because I feel better. You know, I've suffered from migraines in the past, and keeping stable blood sugar really helps me to manage that. So understanding why it's so important to me, and also concretely, and I do the same with career and business, but having criteria. I remember, as you said, travel is really difficult. And I had my first trip, which was while I was still at P&G, was a 3-month sabbatical to South America. And one of the first blog posts I wrote was the Get Fat with Anna diet, because it was just, and you should see the pictures, I'll send it to you afterwards, but it's just dulce de leche and like carbs and sugar every single day. And I do have a picture from Machu Picchu where my friend was like, oh, you're so fat. So it obviously was not a healthy time for me. But then I did another trip a couple of years ago, and I sort of just gave myself some parameters. So I can't remember exactly now, but I was just thinking about it, and it was, you know, don't take second helpings, and, you know, just have one sweet thing per day or something. So it wasn't too difficult things. But actually someone on the trip commented and said, gosh, you've got such a small appetite. I was like, yeah, that's small. But it just worked for me. So I could still enjoy the trip. It made it sort of easier, so I don't have to negotiate with myself every time. I just had those rules, and then I kind of stuck with that. Usually I go with the flow more, but just for those tricky times, I suppose, sort of having a criteria helps. So that's my very long-winded tip 1. So define success. Let me think. So tip 2 would be planning, I guess. So I said, you know, online shopping, travel again, and it's really difficult. So it's an easy excuse to say that when you're traveling, like there's no healthy stuff, but there's always slightly healthier choices. And I tend to try to bring nuts or nut butters you've got in little pouches, or even bars, you know, something that has a bit less in it, just to have as a backup. So I've got no excuse, and, you know, buy something at the airport to take on the plane, for example, and those kinds of things. So planning is an important one. I mean, working from home all day is quite tricky too, because the opposite of travel, it's just, you know, you're so tempted to have a break all the time that it's so easy to just go and sort of, even if it's healthy food, just to be eating all the time. So that's quite difficult. Mm-hmm. And let me think, a third one, I suppose, might be around the self-compassion, I suppose, just to not be too hard on yourself. If I'll repeat that tip in terms of, you know, if things don't quite go as you want them to. Because at the end of the day, my mum has a friend who said, if I can't have my biscuit or chocolate, whatever it was, you know, life isn't worth living. So if that's the case for you, then, you know, hopefully you agree too that it's okay to have that biscuit, but just to sort of have that perspective. And I'm going to tag on to that one, sorry, but you mentioned that one, but focusing on nutrition, I think that's another way to not feel like you're depriving yourself. Because again, skipping back to the beginning of my story, I know my aunt and uncle and then my parents, they all discovered Montagnac diet originally with GI, and then sort of Atkins and all these things. So that kind of low carb, low GI came on, I think when I was about 18, I started reading about that and so on. So that kind of elimination of whole food groups, I think, is quite dangerous. So as much as I believe in, you know, keeping your blood sugar stable and avoiding refined sugars and so on, I think it's easier and healthier to focus on, I need more vegetables, I need to drink more water, more nutrition, rather than saying I'm not allowed to eat potatoes or whatever it is, because that's just, you're going to feel like you're depriving yourself. So there you go. A bit long-winded, but those are my tips for what it's worth.
And I think it's great because it's basically all the tips kind of would be great to even explain to everyone how to avoid the forbidden fruit effect that you experienced at the beginning of your life. Because I totally agree, and I love your tips, and especially I also like how you link it back to business, saying like, you know, your business is also a reflection of where you are, also in terms of your health. So prioritize it, and also with the mindset, and then with the self-compassion, I also find it is really, it helps so much too. It's so much better for I think pretty much everyone I've ever come across with, to avoid the forbidden fruit effect, because that's like, it's just not sustainable. So thank you so much for sharing these tips. And what about if people want to hear more about you, or want to get in touch with you and hear about your business, how and where can they connect with you?
Yeah, sure. So the business, as you said, is one step outside. It's based on the quote that everything you've ever wanted is one step outside your comfort zone. So I'm at onestepoutside.com, and I've got a Facebook page, a Facebook group, One Step Outside as well.
Great. And on Instagram too. Right.
Instagram too, but unfortunately the reason why I don't give that is because that's not one step outside. Some Italian company has that with about 3 followers. So there I'm Anna S.E. Lundberg, which is a bit harder. But if you want to link to that, then you're welcome to do that too, because I'm getting more active there as well, sharing some fun little videos and boomerangs, which is always good fun.
Great. I'll be sharing the caption so people will find that too. Oh, thank you so much for your time and for your wonderful story to share that with us, and as well as the great tips. Thank you so much, Anna.
Thank you. It was fun.